kind of counting.
Hello, it's Sunday. It's time to talk about a long-ass movie called Patton on Classic Movie Salon. Colleen Costello, she's here live from Texas. Hello, Texas.
Hello from Texas. Everything is bigger. We have a big movie. It's appropriate. I'm in Texas.
Perfect. Yeah, it's the perfect state to be in. If you
It is.
talking about.
And you know, this is my 4th state I'm doing Classic Movie Salon from. Seriously, I've done Florida, Texas, New York, and Connecticut.
Oh, look at that.
Mm-hmm.
I think you are the first person to do Classic Movie Salon in 4 states.
In 4 states. Chris Strub better watch out.
Exactly. You're coming for him. You're coming
for Strub.
Watch out, Strub.
Watch out, Strub. It's on.
I had not. Is it crazy hot in Texas? Is it like 1 billion degrees
crazy
in
hot.
Texas?
It's about, it's we're talking approaching the sun kind of hot.
Like over 100?
With the humidity, yeah. And it's not Bedouin kind of nomadic desert Bedouin hot, but we're getting close to, yes, crazy hot.
That is
crazy hot.
I've only flown through Texas. I have not hung
That's
out
right.
there.
You were just here in Houston.
I was
airport.
actually. No lie. When I landed in Houston, I don't know why. That was where my connection was. So I fly from Boston Logan to Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Get off the plane. I swear to God, I'm off the plane for like 12 minutes. And I get a text from Chris Strub, and Chris Strub says, "Where are you?" And I said, "In Houston." And he said, "So am I."
No way.
And I know Christy Gillantine also lives in Houston. And so she...
Oh, no. Wow.
Hey, Tachi. So they were doing
Tachi's
Social Media Day, Houston Social Media Day the next day.
That's right.
And he was like,
yes.
Skip the plane, hang out in Houston. You can go to LA tomorrow. I'm like, yeah, no. That's not going to happen.
No. Rebooking the flight's kind of a big, hassle. And Houston's hard to get around. It's like major traffic. You have LA traffic in Houston.
I guess it would have just got picked up and drove over.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, they would have come and fetched
Tachi,
you. But then,
hello, Florida. We got Florida, Texas, and California today.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Colleen, you're in Texas.
I am in Texas, so we have 2 really hot places we're coming from.
Very hot. And is that a Roku behind you?
Yes.
That is okay, cool. Because I just set up my parents' Roku when I was in New York.
So
actually, you can answer a question for me for them because I don't. Where is my list on Netflix? Because they can't find their list, and I can't.
Oh, on Netflix?
We can pick up on it later, yeah. But so they have the Roku box. They go to Netflix, and they're addicted to Netflix. And they had a first generation box I bought for them 10 years ago, and just switched it to the new one. Put all this other stuff on it, and they're like, "Oh, thanks for having Netflix back." And they're like, "Now we can't find our list." And I'm like,
I'm wondering if they go to either.
I know
Netflix
they're watching
itself.
stuff. Like they go to Netflix through the Roku box. Not that we have to get into tech support, but this is how some people watch movies. I don't know if you know that. So they're in Roku. They click on Netflix, and so they have Netflix open, but they can't find their list within like the queue, as it used to be called.
The queue. Yeah, you know what? That's a good question. I've never looked for the queue or the list since I've been using Netflix on Roku. I just go watch what we need to watch. Yeah.
I have to use the list because when I do, I mean, I'm always on computers watching it, but when I'm looking for other stuff, I always trip over something I want to watch. And so I just click off stuff on my list. So if I have an opening, then I go back to it and go, all right, maybe I'll watch this. But I've definitely done, like with Glow, I just like pressed episode 1 and started watching them. That was
isn't it amazing?
really good show. So let's talk classic movies because that's what this show is. But we'll talk TV channeling. When is TV channeling? When's the next episode?
TV channeling. Actually, I'm editing the next podcast like as we speak. So I mean, not literally now, but
right.
but
yeah. So
it should be
multitasking.
That would be serious multitasking. It will be up tomorrow, so you'll be able to go to iTunes or tvchanneling.com or Stitcher or SoundCloud for now, because they're having a little bit of issue.
Yeah, I hear there's problems at SoundCloud.
Yeah, they've got some major issues. So yeah, you'll be able to listen to it there. And it's interesting because you're talking about Glow, where we did a Bad Girls of Summer
nice.
podcast.
That's a cool idea.
So we have 2 episodes, and the first is looking at Glow and Harlots. So
Harlots. I caught some of Harlots. It's intense.
Oh, yes.
Oh my God! Can I get an amen? Yeah.
And there's also on Glow, there is a documentary on Netflix from 2012 about the original Glow, the real gorgeous wrestling.
Yeah. I'm gonna have to check that out.
I watch it after you've watched the whole series, because it is so cool to see what they pulled from reality, what they sort of composited, what they changed. A lot of stuff that they took from reality.
I refuse to watch Glow.
I used to watch it when I was little. So, because I loved wrestling when I was little. So I was like, what? Ladies wrestling? I got to see this. So, yeah.
Why won't you watch Glow, Colleen? Why won't you watch Glow? The show, the TV show.
I know. I'm just because well, a lot of reasons. It's all in the wrestling thing. And I don't know. I can't.
Honestly, I am not a wrestling fan. I have never watched wrestling. Kathy is over in her studio saying that she watched it and liked it. It is really a story about characters, most of them women. And it really is about characters and friendships and relationships and getting over things. And you will find, in the last episode, you will find yourself rooting for completely fake wrestling. I swear to God. Yeah. And Mark Maron, perfectly cast. It's Alison Brie is great from Community.
She is fantastic.
She's a really smart actor.
Alison Brie is just wonderful.
So you're saying this is like
Colleen, because it's not really about wrestling
at all.
It's more about the characters. Wrestling is just the side piece in this. I think you would like.
Okay. All right.
And also, I don't know if there is another sort of story world where you could come across all of these female characters, because it is so ranged both in size, color, ability, problem.
Yeah, that's okay. Because it seemed so exploitative at the time. It was.
Absolutely.
It was absolutely exploitation. Just like blaxploitation movies were exploitation.
It's a thing.
And all of this is exploitation.
It's exploitation.
It really is. But the whole thing is,
you
find yourself getting caught up in it because there's a reality to it. You know, you're
the
an
human
actor
side.
in Hollywood. You get what you can take, especially at that time when there were lack of roles. So it's just interesting. I would say watch.
So my bad for being prejudging and
negative. It's okay.
Yeah.
No, honestly, I was with you there. I just saw a couple of tweets flying by people I knew, and then I'm like, wait a minute, is this
okay?
And also, when I saw Alison Brie, I'm like, she is not going to do some stupid show.
True.
And also, because one of the main characters doesn't get wrestling at all, you get to see your point of view sort of challenged and educated through it.
Okay.
Kind of it
fills that satisfies that side of
because I think when they were writing it was, and also it was created by the same folks who did Orange is the New Black.
And Colleen, I was not interested at all in this at all. So, I was right there with you. I was like, Glow, I want to see that.
Yeah. No, I totally trust you, Tachi and Joe, both of you. I know when we're on the same page. Yeah, so I'll do it. I'll dive in. Yeah. I will take the plunge. I will jump off the turnbuckle.
and very fun, crazy flawed characers. So much fun.
Okay, well, I can relate to that totally.
Yeah, exactly. So, we all.
I am in. I'm on that page.
And much like our main character in this movie.
Oh my goodness!
Is this guy flawed or what?
Oh my gosh! If you want to talk about unethical, heavily flawed, you lose sense of whoever the actors are that are playing this. he becomes, I mean, not that I knew General Patton,
Right.
but he becomes Patton.
You
know what I'm
something
saying?
about the time you hung out with Patton. I swore there was something. Wasn't there a story? Oh no, that wasn't you.
Back in the day when Tachi and Patton were chilling.
So I'm hanging out with George Patton.
Yeah. Yeah. Back around the way.
So this is streaming on Netflix. It is 2 hours and 49 minutes. I would say it doesn't feel like it, and then it does feel like it. It is very much biopic, co-written by Francis Ford Coppola and the other guy's name I'm forgetting, based on a couple of books, including General Bradley, who I guess is portrayed a little more as palsy with Patton in the movie, where
they were not in reality. And also, if you've heard George C. Scott doing Patton, and it is like this. It is better. And if you Google Patton real voice, not that way.
Watch YouTube, and you will hear his real voice. It's not anywhere near that.
No.
You know, I think it's just the concept, especially in American concept of what power and what a general say. If you watch every cartoon from the 1940s and 50s that have anything to do with the military, the general always sounds like that.
Well, it's the alpha male kind of thing,
right?
And
absolutely,
you know, typical that archetypical
and it's also the kind of drill sergeant thing. But I think culturally, if you look, and that was the other thing that came across in this movie, is sort of like the history of war. But the reality is, I think it's the Māori Indians in New Zealand that do the dances with the grunting and the loud. That is an old culture. So I think part of it is just that kind of, you know, it's sort of like when they teach you in martial arts to make the noise when you strike, that's something about it physically. So I think
intensity.
Yeah, there's something in it about that. And also, you know, if you have a 6'2" guy going like this and you get down, you do your, you know, it's not going to have quite the same vibe.
That's Steamboat Willie leading the charge with
exactly. Come on, guys, let's go kill some person.
Mickey Mouse.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, who's going to follow that into battle? Yeah, it's not really what you want in the Battle of the Bulge.
And you can't slap a guy around and call him a coward with a high voice. But
and with 4 fingers, you know, 4 fluffy white fingers.
No, so it opens with if you've ever seen any bit or piece of this, is the movie's made 1970. It's about 1943, a certain time in 1943, which in terms of storytelling, doing a biopic, I think it's a very smart choice to just concentrate on the characters sort of right before their height and right after their height, because I think you can learn a lot about, because there's, you know, this guy was in reality and in the film so not by the book, so not like, he made a lot of decisions that killed a lot of people. Granted, it all worked out perhaps in the long run for the effort, but the body count, he is responsible for it being at that level. He was a kind of, you know, personal glory guy, and saw himself in reality as someone who had been reincarnated, who had been fighting for centuries, and he just gets reincarnated as all these different people in these wars through history. And that is literally what the guy thought, which, I don't know, he just seems, he seems kind of nuts.
Well, kind of nuts. I think there's also this, if Matthew was here, I'd ask him about the whole thing with the Crusades, because he kind of knows that. And when you think about this, and the people who led the Crusades in Europe, it was kind of like a quote unquote holy war. And if you noticed the role, albeit whether fake or real, that religion seemed to have in his life, it was almost as if he was ordained and destined by God.
Well, he had a messiah complex. I mean,
yes, he really did.
answerable to no one. And you're right, you're spot on with it. You knew you're on the right track, Tachi, all by yourself. So go with it.
No.
But also because I think because he was such a huge history buff, and I just love the ongoing story of how both sides, both and another thing, I love that everything in German was in German. Like there was no,
I love that.
Wasn't either bad German accents or just British.
The authenticity.
I really appreciated that, and it also makes it seem, a tad more real, especially when things are heating up.
Right.
But also Patton talked in the movie a lot about like military fashion and what looks good, and even in the scene, sort of past the opening scene where he talks in front of the flag, and according to Wikipedia and the trusted news source, that scene was shot after the movie, and George C. Scott didn't want to do it, and they told him it was going to be at the end, which was a lie.
Well, it seems a role he was born to play. I mean, everything in the notes with this is, he wanted, and smacks of Patton-esque kind of things. It's just, two of them, an egomaniac with inferiority complexes, because they were worrying all the time about what people thought,
right.
And,
absolutely.
And, answerable wanted. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, please do.
We're just all excited about Patton.
Yeah, very.
Obviously.
Add on.
It is an exciting movie. That opening scene, which is really the ending scene, is so iconic that whenever you hear about Patton, that's the first image that comes into mind.
Yes.
And so I think they made a brilliant choice in terms of having that open up the movie, because you've got this big American flag and this big American ego. It fits. It's not. It's metaphor and it's literal. It really
great
fits.
Directing, because doing that and then getting conning the actor into soothing his ego. We'll do we'll do that later. We'll put it later. We'll do it later, and then boom, slide it in the front.
And I don't. In terms of the flow of the story, if I had to watch it at the end, I would not be interested. It would have felt like a second ending.
No, you need to know that this guy is you need to go into it thinking he's monumental, and this is the American.
I agree, but I'm wondering what the story would be like if you didn't have that, and you just saw it from
more of a guy who's trying to sell himself at all costs and take no prisoners, kind of like, who are you fighting for? What battle are you fighting? Kind of, I don't know. It just, because he makes so many questionable decisions that he's constantly, he's at battle with everyone. He's fighting a war within a war.
But that scene answers everything that you just asked, that opening sequence. Because, do you have to have it? No. If it wasn't there, I think it would be okay. But it answers the fact, when they do the close-up on the medals, when they do the close-up on the rings, when they do all these close-ups on all these personal accoutrements that he has going on, it really explains all of this is because of all of this. So that's the way I saw it. It explains I was like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense. They already set it up in the beginning that this is the type of individual he was, that at all costs, you have to win. It was, there are so many points in the film where he talks about, and I hate to jump to this, but this is my favorite thing, when he slaps the soldier, and he really didn't slap him with open hand. It was with his gloves, and it was almost that Southern gentleman, I challenge you to a duel slap. And yes, and he did it like 3 times, and I was kind of laughing, and it's not funny, but it was funny. So that scene just really, as brash as he is, he didn't outright hit him. He took his glove and did it the way a quote unquote gentleman would. I just found that a wonderful scene.
The opening scene sets the stage. You're along in the grandiosity you're introduced to. This is it's a take no prisoners kind of guy, take no BS, and
but created a tremendous amount of BS.
But created tremendous. He won't take any BS, but he's going to cause you. You don't know it right away, but like right. This is a force to be reckoned with. It's like opening with a funnel cloud,
Look who's here! It's Matthew Ward, everybody. Hey, Matthew. Oh wait, you're muted. Let me unmute you. You are now unmuted.
Sorry I'm late, everybody. I was preparing for a show tomorrow, and suddenly thought, I'm meant to be doing something. I'm meant to be somewhere. And this little light bulb appeared up here. Ding!
Very cool. Well, thanks for joining us, and I hope you have fun at the show tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm going to break several legs. Hopefully not too many of my own.
Or what we say in dance is merde.
Merde, yeah.
Because you don't really want to break your leg
when
you're about to perform, so merde is, yeah.
A little bit better.
It's a French swear word.
Yes. It's where you're going to land if you're not careful.
True. Mm-hmm. So Matthew, what do you think of Patton? And just a poll, I thought it's a long movie. At times it feels long. Overall, it doesn't feel like the whole thing, but it's kind of does. Does it feel like a long story to you, Matthew? Or is it just my short American attention span?
Yeah, I mean, by modern standards, it's somewhat ponderous. I don't think it's the length in minutes that makes it seem long. I think it's the rather ponderous way the story is told. But on the whole, a great movie. Movie about a really ghastly, awful man.
Yeah. Yeah, this guy, like the sum of this movie is Patton was a dick. It was pretty much like there was very little that, I mean, and like we talked about at the beginning, like he was successful, but the way he was successful cost more lives, and it appears that those decisions were way more about ego than tactics.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, the thing is, it's not unique. Time and time again in the history of warfare, there's endless idiots like Patton who just have this lust for glory, and they don't care how many lives they cost, either their enemies or their own. All they want is a big, shiny chest full of medals and then name up in lights. Duke of Buckingham in English history 400 years ago, another classic example, marched an army off into France. It all went wrong, so he ran away and left them to die. Napoleon did that in Egypt. He did it again in Russia. And Patton was just one of them. He just poured his own men's blood into the soil of France and Belgium without any thought of the cost of it.
Yeah, I mean, he tries to take all the credit for Bastogne and Battle of the Bulge, and it's not the way it is, and it's not most of the way the army, will puts it down. So it's just not. He's overrated. They say part of he had some good strategies and thoughts, but again, he was reckless. So they couldn't separate out what parts that his somewhat well thought out contributions were from the overwhelming need to control everything and then disregard authority, which he was rather insubordinate at times. So
totally,
yeah.
I mean, he got away with his aggression because most of the time of his service in World War II was when Germany was on the retreat, and so at that time you can get away with going hell for leather. But when you're in retreat, or when things are more balanced, you can't get away with that. And so if he'd have been there in 1940, when obviously America wasn't there at all, or he'd been there, I don't know, say in the Eastern Front in 1943, or in North Africa in 1941-42, he wouldn't have got away with it. And we saw that in the Kasserine Pass in North Africa when the Americans first arrived. Displayed the same arrogance and they said, stand aside, Limeys, we'll go and sort these Yanks out. We did it in 1918, we can do it again. And they get their butts kicked by being too arrogant.
I think he ignored orders in Sicily. He was so it's it just constantly again and again and Bradley got surpassed him in promotions ultimately, so they took away the company from him. So
Bradley was careful. I mean, the thing is about his ending. He was very, very lucky to have died when and where he did, because if he hadn't been killed in the car accident, he would have just spiraled down into a nutter cluster. You know what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at least it cut him off before he was able to trash his own reputation. And look at MacArthur, you know, he had the same problem, too much ego, ended up advocating nuclear war against the Chinese, and he got booted into infamy. And Patton would have been the same. He would have been trying to start World War III against the Russians. So
it's probably true. Yeah, it would have been out of control.
And a couple interesting things on production. I guess the producers of the original, I guess there was a few people have been trying to make a Patton movie for a while. And one of the producers who made this one initially had contacted the family to get rights, and they called the day after Patton's widow had been buried. So that did not go well. So that is why Francis Ford Coppola, and again I'm blanking on the other screenwriter, they worked off of 2 books, including Bradley's book. So a lot of this was, so they never got access to his diaries. And in terms of the portrayal, this is
Edmund North is the other writer.
Yes, Edmund North, who interestingly wrote and George C. Scott returned for a TV movie.
Yes.
To continue the story of Patton in the mid-'80s, which also ran,
That's right, I remember that. Yes.
It's called The Last Days of Patton, wasn't it?
Yes. Nicely done. Interesting things that no matter what, you have to pick a point of view on telling any kind of story. And there is enough other accounts of Patton being a wackadoodle at some level. Is
that a military term, Joe Wilson?
That is a military.
Yeah, that is.
That boy's a wackadoodle. And also, again, Google Patton real voice and hear the real guy. It's fun.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's nowhere near Mr. C. Scott's portrayal.
George C. Scott actually portrayed him too macho and too majestic in a way.
It really was and I think, granted, this thing won a ton of Oscars, including for best lead for Mr. Scott. I think that because obviously there was the availability of film of Patton, so it's not like he wouldn't have access to the real guy, especially in 1970. But him making a choice as an actor to make this guy bigger than life in performance, and I think that's the one thing that, granted, George C. Scott, great actor, won an Oscar, blah blah blah, but I would have liked to have seen.
But he refused it. Ironic.
Yeah, and that's the other thing, which I have a tremendous amount of respect for. He didn't show up, and he said he against competition between actors, and I have a lot of respect for that. But the portrayal, I mean, granted, it's a very short chunk of time.
But his theory is he would have accepted it had every other actor nominated also played Patton.
Right.
That's his rationale.
Which I think which is a really solid point, and also a solid point with the Emmys that just happened this past week, because I don't pay attention to a lot of it, but something flew by. It was a Variety article. There were something like 848 shows and 2,800 potential shows for the nominees and 2,800 performances for all the categories.
Oh, goodness.
So we are now at the point of it is really going to be about hype. Who's even going to get noticed?
There's so much out. I think this is the thing. And with the meshing of lines now between film and what was traditionally television, this makes it even worse. So there's just so much content out there now. And you notice that for the first time this year, last year, I think was the first time, they have the short form category, which also includes digital. So YouTube, Vimeo, all of that is included now too. So you've got this wealth of entertainment. There's actually a channel called Wealth of Entertainment. Anyway, there's this whole wealth of entertainment, and it's like, how do you narrow things down? What is now the criteria? Something has to change and something has to shift.
And also what's interesting is that the prejudice against television, through the 90s, it was always like, if you did television, you were less of an actor than if you did film. Is no longer the case, both in terms of economics and in terms of the art forms of both. That they're making better stuff on TV because they're making 848 shows. How could they not make a couple things that are any better?
Right.
Exactly. And then
so did you say 2,800?
I believe it was 2,800. Yeah.
So if you watch that pretty well non-stop every day for a year, you could just about do it in a year.
Right.
Probably,
yeah.
If you have no job.
Well, granted, the way that the Emmys are done, they always, the producers pick the show so it's an episode, but in terms of having, if I'm going to watch a 20-minute episode and decide best actor on one performance other than being a guest performance, in terms of time, that's going to be the way to do it. But in terms of having really a grasp on all the nominees, I don't think that's necessarily accurate. But it's the awards, much like George C. Scott's award, it's all about hype and politics and at some level talent, but at some level there was plenty of other great performances, I'm sure, in 1970 that did not get a nomination, just like every other year. But best picture, best director, best didn't get
everything. Writing. Coppola, I think there's, I have it right here. It's, let me just, I can run through the list. The nominations it had 7 nominations, I know that. And then, that's trivia. So it was Best Director, Best Picture, Best Costume Design. I know, Best
costume design. How can you get an Oscar for a nomination for Best Costume when he's a general?
They do.
His uniform.
No, well, because they.
Well, 1970. It's clothing from 1945, portrayed in 1970. Still somewhat of a challenge, and also from what I understand, again reading on the very accurate internet, that apparently Patton never.
There's no lies on the internet.
Exactly. He never wore all of the medals in unison, like in the opening speech, only for one picture that was taken, I guess, in the backyard that his wife wanted, which is what they used to design it off of.
Okay, so one for Best Picture, Best Actor, Best Director, Best Writing, Best Art Direction, Best Sound, Best Film Editing. I was wrong about the costumes. And it was nominated for cinematography, special effects, visual, and Best Music. So it's 10 nominations altogether, which is huge for any picture.
That's huge. I could have seen for the costumes though, because aside from the uniform, I remember when they were in Morocco, and that there were all these different types of.
But I believe those were the real deal.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's not like those costumes were necessarily designed; they just looked fantastic.
That's true.
You never know, though. They could have provided the extras.
Yeah, but
even the locals.
Yeah, but the thing about it is, if you're going to shoot it on location, get somebody else's military to do a parade, you give them credit, they have something to talk about, it all works out great.
Yeah,
there you go.
That's my guess.
But they remake all the uniforms. They don't get Army surplus. I mean, there's a crisp, beautiful, brand new, original.
I believe that some of the and Matthew, maybe you know this. I can't remember whose army a lot of the soldiers came from.
Spanish. It said on. It's right in the trivia.
They still had World War II era vehicles. So
they did the same thing with the Battle of the Bulge film, but they were the wrong vehicles. So the same issue in the Battle of the Bulge, all the stuff was utterly wrong. It looks stupid.
They borrowed tanks. It's in the trivia I was reading through. So nothing was authentic.
So historically, was it just the vehicles that you noticed that were off, or was there anything else that jumped out at you as taking liberties.
There was loads of stuff. The vehicles, some of the characters involved are amalgamated. Some of the aircraft were wrong. Stupid things like in the opening sequence, when he's in that uniform, which he never wore, as we've just said, they've got the right pistol on his hip, but in that sequence when he's been strafed by German aircraft, he's got the wrong pistol in his hand, just because it worked better for the scene. But it's the tanks that stand out most, because a thing like a truck or a half truck isn't so distinctive. But the tanks that they used were several years too late and looked so distinctively wrong.
It's in here about the tanks. I'm trying to find it. But Patton carried Patton's real pistol, the pearl-handled pistols, in dress, when he was in dress uniform. That was real. But everything else.
Yeah, in that strafing sequence he was using in 1911.
Here it is about the tanks. It says American, British, and German tanks in the film are portrayed by post-war M24, M47, and M48 Patton tanks. They were Patton tanks, but they were post-war, as Matthew has stated. So, and the German planes everything was substituted. But it's 1970. How do you do that? So surplus.
So in the back to the pearl-handled pistols, there was a point where they mentioned the pearl handle, and he says, "That's not pearl, it's ivory." What is it? Something like sissies or something to the fact carry pearl. Something about whores in a whorehouse. Something carrying pearl handles. I'm like, okay, so contraband. At that time, I don't think it was contraband, but I'm like, so ivory is somehow better than pearl. So that was interesting.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, it was ivory that his pistols were. Yeah,
and it wasn't contraband. You're right about that too. It wasn't Tachi at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a Celt single action army and a 357 Magnum.
Wow.
And also Patton, he was, and I'm guessing this is also true, he spoke more than one language. He, went to West Point, educated guy, knows his history, is a history buff that keeps going, and he also reads his opponent's writings as they are doing research, opposition research, a term that's in the news a lot lately.
Yeah.
But to see a world with no internet and to see the Germans working off, everything that they could get through the equivalent of tapping or spies or otherwise, but them working off US media and just painting this portrait of their opponent and figuring out what he would or wouldn't do. And Patton doing the same thing was a fun part of the story. And again, according to what I read online, his little competition with the British general was a little more Patton and a little less the other general, which doesn't surprise me. It was Patton's. Yes. It was Patton's baggage, nobody else.
Yeah, that was just a private fantasy of Patton. Monty was just doing his own thing. He wasn't in any competition with Patton because they're on a different track. They're going in different directions.
Does anyone know what format this was shot in? Is this
it's obviously. I think it was 60 millimeter. It was.
I was about to ask if it was 70 millimeter. I wasn't.
Yeah. It was some weird. I just read this. It was some weird term that was. But I believe the film itself was 60 millimeter.
Okay.
I don't see that anywhere in the.
Yeah, I was looking to see if I could find it, but it was so obvious. That it was shot in a wider
it would
format,
make sense
beautiful.
To do that in a big size, in a big
and
way.
Also, I mean, and that's the thing is I've never seen this projected, but to see this projected in a theater in 1970 where the screen wouldn't suck, and to see this little guy walk up on this huge flag and walk back down would work really well. That you can't on a little screen.
Oh yeah, that opening sequence. I didn't like the direction on it.
What about it that you didn't like?
He was moving around too much.
Oh, interesting.
Well, I think it would have worked better if he just walked up, stared straight at us and kept still and delivered the speech. But he kept moving around as if he's got an audience in front of him.
I think though he wanted to get everyone's attention. It might have been it was like a big hangar. and just
but also it could just be the director just saying, I want him to move. Just move. Like just purely like the pacing general. I think maybe that's my guess is what they were going for. And again, we talked about this before, that was shot after the movie, and George C. Scott didn't want to do it, and he was told it was going to be at the end. Weird.
Bamboozled him.
Yeah, a little bit. So I would imagine because the family was not involved in this, and a portrayal of Patton is not going to be like, it can't be, not that this was negative, but this was a really flawed individual and made a lot of bad choices and killed a lot of American soldiers based on those decisions. I don't know if the family would be like, yeah, we'll help with that.
Exactly.
Regardless, but he also, him liking the poetry, him being into the history, him having this sort of reincarnation fantasy, wanting to walk in the steps of all these previous battles, and basing his moves on them. What happened in Roman times? Let's do this because that's what happened.
Yeah. Well, he clearly wanted to leave his mark on history. It was, this complex of his. And the family, you want to wonder, because they chose to show some, dark sides of him. It could have went either, another way where it's just, he's edified beyond belief. But he still comes out looking sort of okay, but they revealed some, interesting, if this was made 20 years ago, that's what we would have got in 1950. It would have never been, they wouldn't have vilified the man one bit. The public wouldn't have stood for it at the studio. Oh, no, Right. So they exposed them, And
also, I guess they did switch up some of the language to get him to keep away from R.
Yeah.
His language was awful.
Sweary.
The interesting thing is when they were in Palermo at first, and there were priests, and they were walking up, and they said, and they were just amazed that you find the time to read a Bible, because they noticed the Bible was on his desk or by his bed, and he was like, you take the time to read. He said, "You're goddamn right." I was like, oh, okay.
They're the worst offenders.
Yes. I was like, okay.
It's those mafia dons that give the most money to church.
Yeah.
That's true. And they go to church every Sunday.
Exactly. So it's these ones that are swearing left and right that, can't hold on to hugging those Bibles.
Well, that was a little bit of comic relief because of that.
It was.
And then going back to the whole, this thing of he and religion, in that same scene where he slapped the soldier, right before that, there was a soldier who was like very badly injured. And you saw that after, all this gruffness, there was a juxtaposition of all this, and then he kneels down by the soldier. He puts, I don't know what metal that is, by his, on his pillow. And then
Purple Heart.
Something.
Yeah, I think it was Purple Heart.
Was that a Purple Heart? I wasn't sure if it was a Purple Heart. People just always assume metals are Purple Heart. So I said, I don't know. Let me find out. So I was guessing it was a Purple Heart. And so then he whispers something in his ear and then prays. So there's this juxtaposition between this man that everybody can't stand and someone who took the time, albeit this was his fault, someone that took the time to kneel down and pay homage and sit for a minute with the man. That was an interesting juxtaposition.
It's unexpected, so you kind of have to pause and go, okay, do I know this man?
But then he goes back to himself, because then he slaps a soldier right after.
Right.
So
well, because here it is. That's that man was shell shocked, and that's an injury he can't get behind. There was the physical injury and a sign of weakness, and he won't tolerate it. But it also alludes to, again, that egomaniac with the inferiority complex, like what's inside of you that you can't tolerate. So you they're taking you deeper inside. I think it's taking you, for me, I got it, taking you deeper inside the man,
and that was
exploring.
I'm sorry, that was society-wide though. The whole thing of mental illness, the whole thing of anything mental, was you still something you can control. So if you're a little off, if you're crazy, if you're going through something mentally, that's your fault, and that's something that you can control. And I think especially it still happens now, so you can imagine back then that was a sign of you're not hurt physically, then what the hell's wrong with you? Get up and put him on the front line. Wow. So,
but I love that the movie went there, and with this, and it was World War II, and I've seen so many World War II movies, and it was there, and it's been there, and some dealt with it quite well, and leaders that dealt with it well, and others, it slapped the hell out of you, So,
but big question: is it a World War II movie?
I think
it's another example. No, it's a biopic first.
Yeah, but look at MASH. What war is MASH about?
Korea.
But technically Vietnam. Yeah.
It's Vietnam. Yeah.
MASH the only way to get away with it.
Oh yeah, it's a statement on
Because you're not going to put a TV show in Vietnam that's like MASH that has a tone.
In 1970s, no.
1970, oh hell no.
Right.
Hell no.
So you put it in Korea, and you can have way more jokes.
I don't know. Do you think it's not a World? What's a good question, Matthew? It's not a World War II.
Do you think it's more of a Vietnam movie because it's 1970?
Well, yeah, I'm just wondering that, because it's about feeding people into the mincing machine without care for them.
Well, that's I guess any war. It's a statement on war. It's a great anti-war statement.
Right, but sure. Like you said, this could have been portrayed. He could have been portrayed as Mr. Hero and Mr. I'll do it my way, and we're successful, and everything he did was right. It wouldn't be that much of a rewrite to change the story.
Yeah. Who would have portrayed, if it had been made in 50 or 55, who would have portrayed him?
John Wayne.
John Wayne, of course, exactly.
Yeah.
And John Wayne.
Well, John Wayne did, but he did The Longest Day, and he played. Who did he play in The Longest Day?
A guy in the 101st.
101st. That's true. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Screaming Eagles.
I don't remember. Yeah, the Rangers. Wasn't it a Ranger?
No, well, the Airborne, the 101st.
Yeah, but the 101st Airborne. Yeah.
Yeah. Playing somebody about a third of his age.
yeah, because that was a '60s movie also. Anyway, but it's clearly an anti-war or anti-violent. And
it's not pro-war. I mean, you would not get people to enlist in the '40s with this thing.
Mm-mm. So maybe it is another anti-Vietnam because it's 1970. The war is going on for 5 years. So great observation, Matthew.
Yeah,
as usual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You're so insightful. Well, I have a question too, since Matthew has started on this trajectory of questions. Is this just the nature? Of course, Patton was a terrible person when it came to these things because it was about ego. But it's not just him. Is this just a commentary on the military in general? Is there any such thing, in war, is anything humane? Could you really say, oh, well, this was a humane general? You're in a war, so is there anything that's right about the whole thing? Is this just the nature of what the military is?
Well, it can be an extension of politics at times, political might. But a horrible thing was going. If we're talking about World War II, we're talking about a horrible thing that's taking place to end evils.
But also, I think when you take a bunch of kids and you train them for a very short amount of time and you drop them in another country and
to kill people,
to kill people, like they're just like opening a new Walmart. There's going to be stuff that goes wrong. So, because I'm nothing. I'm nothing against the military. I'm pals with people who served, but it's not.
What are you trying to say, Joe?
What I'm trying to say is that no matter, I think the reason that Vietnam
Walmart is evil.
Not only that that Vietnam was Vietnam and there was a police action, but because there was so much press access, we got to see
so much more of what was really happening, and that doesn't happen anymore. So we never get the real feel for what's going on in Afghanistan or anywhere else that we're blowing stuff up. And that is a choice of the state to not give that access. And
it's what Tachi was getting to when she asked. It's political. It's an arm of the government, and it's used to it's propagandized. War is an instrument. And look, it's being done again. I mean, we're going to budget more money for what the military, and take it away from. I mean, do we need more planes? For what? We're not using them. You know, so we have a lot of planes.
And you know, the whole thing is there's this whole when you're enlisted and you're not at the upper ranks of the military, you are basically the worker bees, and you're the ones going out and doing all of what, you know, the work or the atrocities or whatever, and you have to find a way to justify it to yourself, even if you don't 100% agree with it. And you kind of see this in the film, you know, people are banged up and stuff, but you have to find a way to justify that, okay, we're doing the right thing, because could you live with yourself if you knew this was fundamentally wrong? So you've got to justify, and I'm saying this also from a point of, a lot of the students I teach online are military students. So I have a large percentage of enlisted students. And when there are certain things we're talking about, you can see what they feel in their statements. And it's all kind of cookie cutter. It aligns with almost what they've been fed that they're supposed to feel. And nobody wants to deviate from that, because you have to find a way to justify this, what we're doing the right thing. So it's interesting when you look at that whole thing.
Well, but also keep in mind, they're not allowed to question at that level.
No.
So it's a really weird job.
And also it's volunteer force.
Mm-hmm.
So,
they were drafted.
Kind of volunteer.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying, but
you know?
But in terms of a gig that you can get a college education out of, it's a job. But and because the other options at this point in manufacturing history and other opportunity history, that's less, which I think is why the military is where it is. And we're, you know, no senator's kids are going to ever get drafted in this country. So, and they're also not going to volunteer 99% of them. My take.
Which is okay. I don't fault them for that. I don't fault you at all.
But I think it's always, you know, it was always, even when I was a kid and the Marines were trying to get me to enlist, and there was some guy dogging me on the phone, and he was selling everything, but I said, so I'm going to be spending a lot of time being trained how to kill people, right? I mean, that is the job. Well, yes, but, and then he tells you everything else you do. And I'm like, yeah, but there's still that whole, like, so if something goes down, you know, Marines, one of the first.
The Marines are,
I'm,
you know, all the respect in the world for the people who can do that job. I'm just not one of those people.
Mm-mm.
And I know that.
It is a job, and you know there is a purpose for it, or we have created in this world a purpose that you have to have a military. So, you know, all respect for that. But then it's like it's also, there's this disregard for the individual. Okay, just like I love this slapping scene, so I keep going back to it. He's shell shocked. You're not supposed to hear these types of things day in and day out. You're not supposed to see people getting killed in front of you and not be affected by it. To be honest, there are probably very few people who can squash all of that and not be affected by it. And if you can, you need to go seek some help, seriously. So obviously, some people deal with it differently. It just started to bubble to the surface for him. And so it makes it, he is a representative of all the other people who just couldn't do it anymore. You know, he became a representative of everybody in all of our military, that after a while I can't do it anymore. And then you get out and you have to deal with society in a normal way, how can you? You know, so all these things came up.
But part of putting a group of human beings together to work as a team is that necessity that the individual is less important, because in order for all this to work, everybody's got to be at the same level, in unison, you know, team building, all that stuff, because you psychologically know that, much like cops, your partner is the person who's going to save your life if something goes down, and vice versa. And I think with the military, you know, in every situation, you have a bunch of guys go out, something's going to happen, somebody's not coming back, and one can save the other. But I think it's a byproduct of war. There's no other way to do it. Like, we're not built for it, so you gotta make everybody into one thing, one mind, and again, that's why we have the access to our military actions in the media now. Very little.
Yeah. No outside influences.
Right.
Don't change their minds. Yeah.
They also don't do, I forgot the term, but when you have news media, you know how news media used to travel with certain
they're embedded, but they are embedded now, but it's
different from how it used to be.
Yeah, it's press embedded. It's not embedded.
It's press embedded, but they need, I think they get to see it and filter it before it comes out, because now it's security leaks, it's revealing access of where they classified information where they could be, because they're in places now where they can't, the risk of a report giving away where they're at is, the game has changed. You know, if you know of the locations of where they're placed, but they still do it. It's just, I want to say censored. If there's, is it or isn't it? I don't know. I guess it is.
No, it's completely censored.
It's censored
for whatever reason. And again, you can say it's censored for good,
for good reason, probably. Yeah.
And blah blah blah. But in terms of so fine, make it a delay. You know, give it to us a week later, but let's see what the hell's going on.
True.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We could argue we have a right to know.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's if that's the number one thing we're spending on money, then that should be the number one thing that we're getting information on, or at least something close to it. At least
well, Brian Williams was there.
Yeah.
Everywhere. The other thing, Patton's. I guess Patton actually slapped more than one soldier in reality.
Probably.
Yeah, it did.
And his grandfather.
There's two well-known occasions.
Oh, really? And what are they?
Well, the film depicted both of those sort of amalgamated into one. They're both similar situations where he slapped PTSD people.
And again, I think because he's always couching it as they're not physically injured and they're among these heroes who are physically injured, that they don't belong there. And it also reminded me of and granted it's a military archetype at some point, but Apocalypse Now, Robert Duvall's character, where everyone dives when things blow up and he doesn't. And much like they showed George C. Scott a couple of times, you know, when he's yelling at the guys over the water and a bomb goes off behind him and then a bomb goes off in the water in between them, he's just sort of like weather.
Yeah, but that's kind of a deadness inside. It's non-reflexive. I mean, it's just, it's not even, it's like looking into someone's cold, dead eyes.
Right, but I'm wondering how much of that is kind of related in a way to a different kind of shell shock, a different kind of, because the story he tells, you know, that whole thing about
it is
getting shot in the nose, like
he's emotionless. He can't feel anything anymore. So it's loss of the ability to feel, and he turned into a machine. I mean, he's only obsessed with one thing. You know, it's kind of death at whatever cost. You know, it's become an obsession with him, you could say. And he himself, he might have been slapping the guy because he recognized himself in that man on some level and said, this is weakness. You know, you're not like, you don't want to become like me. or whatever. You're taking the wrong route. Look at me. I was weak and I became this guy, and you're cowering. What? Snap out. You can be me too. So it just
that's a good point.
Whether it's the right, and then we're left the question: is this the right road? Should we look at this boy and heal, or should we become this thing and become the monster? So is he, because he's also become another weapon, a class of a different classification of weapon of the military, and an instrument of death in a way. So what's the better evil? The better consequence of if it's battle fatigue, what they called it back then. So it's
But what would Patton have done? And his ilk, there was loads of Pattons. What would they have done without a war? You couldn't imagine Patton doing the gardening. You couldn't imagine Patton working in an office. Him and his kind, all they want to do is go around the world and blow things up and kill people.
He probably would have done just the same and ended up in jail. The military is because you have people who do come out of jail and come out of the military and end up in jail.
He would have been the least liked regional manager at the liquor distribution company. Because we are going to conquer all of the East Coast with our beer. Because the thing is, like, now I saw some picture fly by of some generals in North Korea, and their medals go to their pants. Their medals go full jacket, and then there's 3 medals on the top leg of their pants because there's so many medals. And the person was pointing out, how do you get all those medals without going to war?
Yeah, but that Kim Jong, he better watch when he's asleep, because one day, them generals, they're gonna,
But you know the answer to that question. You've watched Dastardly and Muttley and Vulture Squadron. Medal, and he gets another medal too. Medal for tying his shoelaces, medal for putting milk in his teeth.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's one country which is so ridiculous. They even give their service personnel a medal for crossing the Atlantic. How pathetic is that?
The United States gives medals for crossing the equator.
Exactly. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, us. I know. That's why you get one for being in the
Boy Scoutish.
Yeah.
It's just stuff. Get started, and then people are like, "Well, who's gonna start taking those medals away?"
Mm-hmm.
I don't think people even. Go ahead.
I must mention Jill's eyewitness story. Going back to the story about Patton and Monty. Jill's father was a tank gunner in Normandy, so obviously serving under Monty. And one day he was going along the road during Operation Goodwood, and there's an American column of tanks going the opposite way. And they says, "Where are you going? The Germans are that way." And the Americans said, "Yeah, we know, we're going this way." So Jill's dad was not very impressed with those guys at all.
Wow. Wow.
What would Patton have done? He'd have jumped out there and slapped every one of them.
Slapped all of them.
Yeah. And slapped their tanks.
Even harder. So we're closing out the show. We're all recommending Patton. It is not a perfect movie. It is, again, it's because this character is so big and the performance needs to be equal. There is a fantasy element to it throughout. For me, there's a fantasy element throughout the entire movie of Patton because he was too big to be real. I think it's very hard to perform that kind of a character on screen, especially for 2 hours and 49 minutes, and it not becoming a tiny little bit caricaturous. And that, again, that's my take. But, and also nice that, like, he stayed the same age. You didn't have to see him, all right, let's age him up even more. And
old General Patton.
Yeah, I think again it was
at the old general's home.
Oh, and also the scene that we talked about earlier, the slapping scene, or Tachi, when you were talking about how he kneels down and he whispers to the injured soldier, I thought what was really interesting. Again, director-writer choice, I don't know, but we don't hear it. And I think that was a really smart choice.
Very smart, very smart. It keeps you guessing, and it keeps you thinking about, well, what could he have said, and then putting pieces together. I like that we did not hear what he said.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And
it was
also,
because he knew his Bible, and yeah,
probably. And also the way they, I mean, granted, long ass movie, but the way that they portrayed the sort of, you know, one battle run, and then, you know, they keep going like maps, now we're here, maps, now we're here. And I felt like the actual military scenes were long enough and sort of well placed for it to come in a little bit as a war movie, but it wasn't, you know, it wasn't a Tora situation where it's just like, woohoo, nothing but let's blow some stuff up.
Michael Bay.
Yeah, exactly. So next week, The Shining. Are you ready to get scared? Are you ready to get scared? It's Jack Nicholson. Just keep reminding yourself, it's Jack Nicholson.
Jack.
And this will be interesting because I haven't seen it since like I think I was like little, and of course I not little, but it came on like ABC or something, and so I couldn't do it all. So this will be good.
Be good to watch some snow while I'm here dying in Texas.
Oh yeah, that's true. Very true.
Good luck with that.
And can I just wonder why nobody has said anything?
I noticed it. You have a hat on.
I didn't notice.
I noticed it
until then. Very cool.
I noticed it, but we were in the heat of talking about General.
We were. It's a big movie, and I'm just having bad hair is really the.
But we all have hats on today.
Yes, exactly.
Well, first time in classic movie Salon history, yes. I think. I don't know.
Yeah, we've done it a couple other times. So Matthew, have a good show tomorrow.
Very much. Yes. Yeah, we're going all the way to, what is it, 1791 tomorrow.
Not quite as far back as last week.
Well, I mean, last week was mad, you know. I did the live show on 1617, packed it up, and went straight onto a film set in 1948 and was on the film set all week. So, no space.
It's a lot of jumping around in centuries here. My goodness.
You're a time traveler.
Easiest way to time travel.
Yeah.
Every day, him and Jill got to get in that DeLorean, get it up to.
Really?
Marty!
Totally a lot of mileage there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Goodness. My goodness.
All right. Well, I will see you all next week. Thanks for hanging out. Karen and Marilyn, thanks for dropping by. Good to see you all next week.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Yay.
Bye.